My boss gave me food from the trash so I could learn to be humble. I didn't know what real hunger was until I started working at Don Elias's restaurant. I was 22 when they hired me. I had just finished a basic cooking course I could barely complete thanks to a scholarship. I showed up to the interview with torn shoes and an empty stomach. I still remember that while I waited at the reception, the cashier gave me a look that said, "Is this the new guy?" Like I stank. Don Elias was a big man. Big in stature, big in voice, big in ego. He had that kind of smile that never touches the eyes. He looked me up and down, like someone choosing cattle for the slaughterhouse, and said, "So you want to work here? Then you'll have to learn humility. We don't come here to complain." I said yes, like an idiot. At first, they had me cleaning the customer bathrooms, the stove burners, the grease traps. I didn't complain. I couldn't afford to. My mom was sick and my little sister needed school supplies. I was sleeping in a borrowed room with a mattress on the floor, and I walked 2 hours a day to get to the restaurant. The first week, they didn't give me any food. I thought it was a mistake. Maybe they forgot. Until I timidly asked the head cook, Donna Maria, if I was entitled to lunch. She didn't answer, just lowered her gaze and kept chopping onions. At 2 in the afternoon, after everyone had eaten, they sent me to take out the day's garbage bags. And there it was, a red bag, smaller, set apart from the others. When I opened it, I found several containers of chicken and rice, pieces of meat still warm, and unfinished bread. The bag had a note written in marker, "For the new guy." I froze. "What are you standing there for?" yelled one of the waiters. "That's your food." "Or what? Too fancy for that." The laughter spread like fire in a grease-filled kitchen. That day I didn't eat. And that night, the hunger made me shake. On the third day, the bag showed up again. But this time with a paper inside. "Don't forget to say thank you." I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. I ended up eating the rice in secret, like a criminal. I was so hungry my body trembled. The rice tasted like plastic, but I swallowed it without chewing. I thought about quitting. I thought about it every night. But the rent for my room was due in 2 weeks, and I had nowhere else to go. Going back to my mom's meant burdening her and my sister with no food, no medicine, no electricity. So I endured. The kitchen was hell. The heat made my nose bleed. Every time I made a mistake, even a tiny one, like dicing a tomato too finely, Don Elias yelled at me in front of everyone. "You think you're a chef just because you took a little course? You're not even good enough for dog food." And everyone laughed. It was like they enjoyed it. Like watching someone else sink made them feel less drowned. Once, while serving lunch to the other employees, Donna Maria accidentally dropped a piece of meat on the floor. She was about to throw it out, but Don Elias appeared and said, "Give it to the new guy? Let him learn what it takes to earn a bite." She looked at me. Her eyes were full of shame. She served it on a separate plate, and I ate it, chewing dirt, grease, and humiliation. Months went by. They no longer gave me the red bag. They sent me straight to check the day's leftovers. I ate what customers left behind: bones with scraps of meat, rice stuck to the sides, cold sauces, and soggy bread. I had no choice. Until one afternoon, while taking the bags to the dumpster, I found something different. A note written in marker on the cardboard of a vegetable box. It said, "It's not your fault. We all went through this. If you can, get out." I stared at it for several minutes. There was no signature, but it was the first time I felt like someone, whoever it was, saw me as a human being. One night, almost at 11, they locked me in the storage room for forgetting an order. In reality, it was the supervisor's fault, but no one would contradict him. I slept on the floor, next to the sacks of potatoes, smelling like onions and rotting plastic. When I came out the next morning, my lips were cracked and my body was numb. Don Elias looked at me, mocked me, and said, "You see, that's how you learn humility." "What? You thought you were going to come straight from school and be the boss?" That word echoed in my mind. Humility, as if he knew what it meant. As if breaking me down was teaching me something. But it was in December when everything changed. The restaurant was packed. They hosted corporate dinners, parties, and hired extra help. I had been there for over 10 months, working from Monday to Monday without a contract, without insurance, without a single day off. That night, I was in the kitchen helping to plate over 80 portions of stuffed turkey. In the middle of the chaos, a well-dressed woman entered the kitchen. She looked at the food and said, "This looks beautiful. Who made the stuffing?" Without thinking, Don Elias pointed at me. I froze. But then she smiled. "Excellent work, young man. Do you have your own recipe line?" Before I could answer, he cut in. "Of course not. Everything he knows, he learned here. From me." He came in not even knowing how to turn on a stove, and everyone laughed. That night, they didn't give me any food. Not a piece of turkey, not a single potato. Just leftovers. Leftovers of the leftovers. What happened next was what started to change everything. But I didn't realize it until one early morning, when I went into the staff bathroom and found one of the new employees, a 17-year-old boy, vomiting into the sink. He was shaking, crying. He looked at me with eyes full of fear. "Did they give you the red bag too?" he asked. I didn't know what to say. All I knew was that what they had done to me, they were doing to everyone. And I was already becoming part of that system. And that I couldn't allow. After that morning, something broke in me. Seeing that kid vomit like his body was expelling despair woke me up. I saw myself in him. I didn't cry anymore. Not even the recycled food disgusted me. I had normalized everything. Even the pain. That was the first sign I was losing a part of myself. The kid's name was Julian. He came from the countryside, just like me. He had big eyes and a hunched back from carrying sacks of potatoes since he was 13. I asked how long he had been working there. 4 days, he said without looking at me. They gave me the same thing they gave you, the red bag, the same one I had eaten from in fear, not knowing if it was a joke or punishment. Turns out it was a tradition. That's what the old employees called it. Don Elias says it's part of the training, that the ones who endure are the ones who are useful. Julian repeated it like a cursed verse. The ones who endure are useful. The kitchen kept running like a torture machine, disguised as a prestigious kitchen. If a customer complained about the taste, they made us eat the dish in front of everyone to learn from the mistake. Once, the oven guy got the pork loin temperature wrong. Don Elias made him eat 3 cold portions, right in the middle of the shift, while yelling that he was stealing the soul from the business. The manager vomited in the sink. No one said anything. One night, after closing, I stayed behind washing pots with Julian. No one else wanted to help him, and he could barely move his fingers. His nails were broken. His palms were bleeding. As we scrubbed grease with cold water, he said, "Do you think if I quit, they'll still pay me for these days?" I didn't know what to say. I had been there for almost a year and had never seen a single paycheck. Everything was based on trust. The deal was food, if you could even call it that, shelter, a corner of the storage room if you had nowhere to sleep, and training. But training for what? To become obedient dogs? The following Monday, there was a mandatory meeting. All the kitchen staff, waiters, cleaners. Don Elias stood in front of us like a dictator addressing his soldiers. "I've heard complaints that some of you feel mistreated." He walked slowly, like he was enjoying the fear in the air. "This is not a school or a daycare. We build character here. This is where the best are forged." He paused and looked at us. "If you're not good enough, you're out. No one is indispensable." He pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket and read a name. Julian Munoz. My stomach tightened. Julian looked down. "Out." Don Elias said, "Nothing more. You failed the test. You lack humility." I said nothing. No one did. Julian walked out without a word. But as he passed by me, he handed me a napkin. Written in shaky blue ink, there were only 2 words. "Don't get lost." That phrase drilled into my brain for weeks. I was already lost. Or so I thought. Because after that, everything turned colder. More mechanical. I became just another one. I'd show up, wash, cook, clear scraps. Slept little, spoke less. I locked myself inside my mind, where the only safe space was imagining myself far away from there, somewhere else, where no one looked at me like I was worth less than a rotten potato. But Don Elias noticed. He always noticed. One night, he came up to me while I peeled cassava in the darkest corner of the kitchen and said, "You used to cry more. Now you endure." I like that. I didn't answer. "You know why I give you food from the trash?" He said softly, like he was sharing a family secret. "Because only those who've seen the bottom can truly value what they have." He knelt and looked into my eyes. "And you, kid," came in all cocky. "All about your technical degree and scholarship and bright future. Here, you learn what it means to serve." I stood up and kept peeling, not out of bravery, out of fear. Fear that if I stood up to him, I'd lose the only thing that still gave me purpose. The memory of my mother waiting for me, of my sister eating rice on Sundays, believing I was living my dream. One random afternoon, while scrubbing dishes, I heard the waiters laughing. I went to look, and I saw one of the new guys, a kid around 20, eating a dessert from the trash. He was crying as he did it. And then it happened. I saw myself, at 22, trembling, swallowing cold rice. And I snapped. I grabbed a steel tray, slammed it against the sink, and shouted, "Enough!" The silence was brutal. Everyone turned. Dona Maria looked at me like she was seeing a ghost standing. Don Elias came out of his office. He walked toward me. Slowly. Very slowly. He faced me with that old crocodile smile of his. "Have you lost your mind?" I took a deep breath. My chest burned. No more bags. No more leftovers. No more tests. "We are not dogs." He laughed. Loud. Genuinely. "Well, damn. You woke up." And then, in a low voice, he leaned into my ear and whispered, "Look around. Who's going to follow you?" And he was right. No one moved. No one looked at me. Don Elias raised his hands like he had just won a bet and said, "You're suspended. 1 week. Without pay. Go. Let's see if anyone out there treats you better." I didn't defend myself. I didn't ask for explanations. I just walked out. I left through the back door. I didn't have bus fare. I walked 3 hours to the room I lived in. I collapsed on the mattress and cried like I hadn't since I was a child. I thought I had lost. But that very night, someone knocked on my door. It was Dona Maria. Her face was pale. She held a bag. "I can't take it anymore," she said. "This isn't just unfair anymore. It's inhumane." She opened the bag. Inside were photos, receipts, and a notebook. A notebook with names, dates, and tasks. Everything detailed, including how Don Elias used new employees to cut personnel costs, passing them off as trainees, and how he had faked food donations to charity organizations that never existed. Julian kept this. He gave it to me before he left. He asked me to give it to you if you ever exploded. I looked at her, speechless. "You're not alone anymore." she said. But if you're going to do something, make it from the inside. And that's when I knew what I had to do. Not run, go back. But with a plan. I returned the next Monday like nothing had happened. Head down, backpack over my shoulder, uniform still smelling like bleach and rancid smoke. Those who saw me lower their eyes. They knew what Don Elias did to the repentant ones. No one greeted me. Dona Maria looked at me from the plating station. She didn't smile, but her eyes told me she was ready. And that was enough. They gave me basic tasks: peeling potatoes, cleaning floors, organizing boxes. No kitchen work, no access to key areas. Don Elias watched me like a vulture. Let's see if you really learned humility, he said, handing me a shovel to pick up trash from the alley. This time, no food bags. You didn't earn them. I looked at him and nodded. Not a word. He thought he had won. But that week, I started observing everything like never before. Schedules, breaks, deliveries. The meat truck that came every Thursday always brought more than what was logged. The night shifts billed more hours than were actually worked. And there was a fixed group of favored employees who always received part of the budget meant for new uniforms or training courses. I wrote all of it down in a notebook hidden in my jacket lining. And every night, at home, I transcribed it neatly. I used codes for the names. Maria helped me decode the figures. Secretly, she handed me old documents from the accounting archive. One by one, several others started joining in, silently, because fear doesn't leave. But disgust does. The real turning point came on a Friday night. It was special presentation day for some investors. Don Elias had a system. He made the staff prepare high-end dishes, filmed the procedures as if they were training sessions, and then showed that to recruiting companies that offered scholarships. That didn't exist. It was all a front. That Friday, I was assigned to polish the utensils and set up the presentation table. Don Elias didn't suspect me because I looked submissive, thinner, with deeper dark circles under my eyes. It was all part of the plan. But that day, while the dishes were being photographed, he made a mistake. He dropped his phone. As he bent down to pick it up, one of the trays slipped and fell straight to the floor, covered in sauce. He turned to me, as if he had been waiting for something to unleash his fury. "You? Useless," he yelled at me. "Pick that up and clean it with your tongue if you have to." And in that split second, I saw it. All of them. The new ones. The old ones. The ones who swallowed hard. The ones who lowered their heads. And something inside me said, "Now." I walked over, picked up the tray, and placed it on the table with all the mess still on it. "I'm not a dog," I said calmly. Don Elias froze. "What did you say?" "You heard me." A sharp silence fell. A waiter dropped a glass. No one bent down to pick it up. "You're fired," he said through gritted teeth. Out. But I didn't move. I took out the notebook. The same one I had been filling for months. I have everything. The ghost hours. The inflated deliveries. The fake courses. And I'm not alone. Don Elias turned pale. His jaw went slack. He stepped back. "What are you insinuating? That this?" I showed a page with duplicate signatures and stamps. "Isn't humility. It's abuse. It's theft. It's a rotten system." At that moment, Dona Maria stepped forward and pulled out a laminated sheet. It was a copy of a complaint filed years ago shelved. It featured the name of a young man who had worked at the restaurant, with identical accusations. He had left. No one listened to him. But his story remained. "We're not the first," Maria said softly. "But we can be the last." The employees began to move, as if someone had lifted an invisible weight. One pulled out his phone and started recording. Another, the dessert girl, showed photos of the storage room where she slept between sacks. The head cook stepped forward and said, "I have documents too." And right then, Don Elias changed. "You want war?" he shouted. "Then have it. You're nothing without this place." He turned, entered his office, and slammed the door. That night, we didn't work. That night, we all sat in the dining room. We shared rice, lentils, even a piece of old cake someone brought from the fridge. We looked each other in the eye. For the first time. Without fear. And before I left, I checked my phone. There was a new message. Unknown number. It simply said, "I know who you are. Stay out of things that don't concern you." No signature, no photo. And that was the first time I felt this was bigger than I thought. Dirtier, more dangerous. But there was no turning back. After that night, the restaurant was never the same. Not because Don Elias stopped shouting. On the contrary, he tripled the pressure. Cut shifts, made up absurd fines, changed passwords, disconnected cameras, and forced us to sign confidentiality clauses with convoluted language. But something had changed, something he couldn't control. Us. The looks were no longer of fear. They were of strategy. No one fully trusted anyone, but we all knew we were on the same side. In the uncomfortable silence of the kitchen, among the smoke, the orders, and the trays, the eyes spoke. "Hang in there. Just a little longer. I've got your back." The plan wasn't to report. Not yet. It was to resist. Document. Wait for the right moment. Dona Maria guided us with her experience. You don't bring down a system with a kick. You break it from the inside, at the seams. And I was no longer the same boy who cried over a bag of rotten rice. One Wednesday night, at 2:14 a.m., I received another anonymous message. "You think you're the hero, but fire doesn't distinguish martyrs from the guilty." That same night, when I went down to the storage room to drop off a box, I found an oil trail leading from the pantry. I followed it on instinct, and behind the sacks of rice, I found something. A phone. Recording. It had been taped to the wall. The camera pointed straight at the corridor where deliveries were made. Don Elias was recording us. Everything. The conversations. The movements. Maybe even our silent meetings. And if there was one, there were surely more. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I kept the phone, and that same night, with Maria, we reviewed the recordings. Everything was there, from fake fights to cover meat theft, to footage of me writing in my notebook. But there was one clip that took my breath away. A meeting in Don Elias's office. On screen, him, two suited men, and one of us. Raphael, the new guy. The one who brought extra food to share. The one who always said, let's not rush things. He was leaking information. Raphael sold us out. He was the one sending the anonymous messages. And we didn't know. Days later, everything exploded. Don Elias walked in looking victorious. I told you this was an elite business, didn't I? He announced, as if making a toast. Well, I sold the brand. You don't need to know to whom. Just start packing your things. We all froze. What do you mean you sold it? The dessert girl said, the restaurant is changing hands. The deal closes in a week. And I don't need you for the transition. You'll get a nice letter of recommendation. If you sign this, he said, handing out sealed envelopes. Maria read hers in a low voice. Her hand was trembling. It was a statement in which we acknowledged that the working conditions were adequate, that we had received training, and that the treatment was fair. Whoever signed gave up the right to file a complaint. And if we don't sign? I asked. Don Elias smiled like a snake. Then there's no letter. No severance. No references. Nothing. You die professionally. That night I cried. Not out of fear. Out of rage. So much effort for what? So he could sell the place and wash his hands of it? I thought about giving up. But when I went back to the service room, I found a handwritten note. It was from Maria. It simply said, tomorrow, 8 a.m., don't miss it. Bring everything you have. Everything. And I did. The next morning, when I arrived, everyone was already there. Not as employees. As witnesses. Dona Maria stood at the front and played a video. It wasn't ours. It was one of the ones from the phone I found. It showed Don Elias admitting to falsifying data to increase his profits. He was talking to two men about how to create model employee profiles to sell franchises. And the best part, a date, a time, a recognizable face. Raphael. And who recorded this? Said Don Elias, bursting in, furious. You did. I replied, showing him his own phone. That's why you hid it. He lunged at me, grabbed me by the neck. But this time we weren't alone. Maria pushed him. The kid from the dish station shouted so loudly the kitchen shook. And for the first time, Don Elias broke. We didn't call the police. Not yet. The new buyer arrived the next day to sign. He was an elegant man, in a white suit, with a plastic smile. He greeted us with hypocrisy. But before he could sign, one of ours, the maintenance guy, handed him a folder. Just so you know what you're buying. And right then, everything happened. The new buyer left without saying a word. The contract wasn't signed. Don Elias went into his office and didn't come out for hours. That afternoon, we found him passed out. On his desk, burned papers, empty bottles, and an envelope with his name on it. He was breathing, but he wasn't okay. The ambulance took him away. We never heard from him again. A week later, the restaurant shut down. A month later, Dona Maria opened her own community kitchen. Some followed her. I didn't. I took my notes, my journals, the cameras, and I left. I changed cities. I changed names. But recently I received a package. No sender. Inside was a photo. It was of Raphael. In the background, he was now working at another restaurant, owned by the same investors from the video. The note said, this was never about Don Elias. He was just a pawn. And that's when I understood something. All this time, while we thought we were fighting a monster, we were only peeling back the skin of a much larger, older, more rotten system. It wasn't a restaurant. It was a network, and I had caught its attention.